Welcome to this wonderful scenario where I can completely screw up my player's story. Should probably see in the chat where they tell me that I'm wrong or busy screwing it up. Last things in order. Okay, that should do it. So our journey begins in the lovely town of Rivergate, where it's a reasonably new group of islands, barely discovered about 28 years prior. So still smallish town, but it very quickly became a stopping over point for trade between Etus and Sauk, and as a result grew quite large. So we are now starting off with a group of unfamiliar people. There is a Goliath barbarian named Dobo, a human wizard named Jay, a warforged artificer named Will, a human fighter named Aurelius, and a halfling rogue named Lindel. Due to the circumstances of the situation at the tavern known as the Cloak and Dagger, these 5 individuals were forced to sit together at a table even though they usually would not. And were forced into conversation with one another until the tavern owner Zumar Zamor brought to them 2 contracts. One was for goblins causing some issues to the east, and another was for bandits raiding farming villages to the south. The group first went, sorted out the goblins, simple, easy, get to know one another a little bit and trying to find out, can we actually trust this person in a dangerous situation, and then went on to tackle the bandits. And, simple bandit cave, relatively easy, but what stood out for them was the person that they had locked up in their cave. And this person had a slightly sickly yellowish skin, very unnatural, and did not seem to take note of people coming in and out of the cave as such. And the moment they released this human, or the party released this human, they discovered that this was probably not the best of ideas. So this human initially attacked them, flying into a ferocious rage, after which they quickly subdued this individual to the point where he was he came back to his senses and started begging for mercy. He very much appeared human again. So they tied him up and decided to take him back to Rivergate for the town guard to take control of the situation. But upon exiting the cave, they noticed that their one companion, Dobo, was missing. He had found his way off somewhere. So, seeing as he was a big guy, they decided to let him go on his way, return to Rivergate, and then after which to only go look for him, which they did do. They met up with a traveling bard named Tact Hailstrom, who directed them towards where he had seen something similar as to what it was that they were looking for, a big guy following around a woodland creature like a little lamb. So, following the bard's instruction, they went to where he was seen, and did in fact discover their newly acquainted friend Dobo following around a dryad in the forest, and Dobo, being completely and utterly charmed by this dryad, was in the nude, walking around behind her like a little lamb, despite being nearly twice her size. After which they attacked the dryad in order to try and break the spell on Dobo, which in turn angered Dobo, and he rushed onto the nearest party member, who happened to be Lyndall at the time, and in his blind barbaric rage, he initially missed Lyndall. Lyndall dove out at the last second between his legs, but unfortunately for him, found himself face to face with Dobo's giant member, and it slapped him in the face. But they did manage to kill the dryad and free Dobo from the spell, and he regained consciousness and covered himself up for decency's sake. And upon which they made their way back to Rivergate, where they came face to face with 3 young dragons who were busy raging chaos on the northern part of Rivergate. So joined up with some of the local guards and some other mercenaries in order to solve this problem. The battle ensued. Some people got hurt, some people got died. The best part was, in fact, Will, who decided he will not go for the direct confrontation, but rather he would enter one of the burning buildings and climb up to the 3rd floor, which in this case was the attic. So ground floor, 2nd floor, and then the roof, so attic. And in order to give him a slightly better vantage point, upon exiting the building on the roof, he saw one of the dragons flying in the streets beneath him, and he decided his best course of action is to jump on its back, blades out, daggers out, trying to attack him, and he completely mistimed his jump, landing face first into the hard ground next to the building. And until today, there is a well-shaped crater in the north of, or the northern district of Rivergate. Fun remembrances. He managed to brush himself off. Being made of metal, he was able to take the hit a lot better than someone else would. But then was face to face with the dragons in the battle, and eventually managed to overpower the battle or the dragons and sort out the problem. Dobo decided that, he managed to speak to one of the dragons and found out that these dragons were more just curious younglings who had traveled to Rivergate and accidentally set off some trigger-happy guard, and that's how the battle started. So Dobo decided to hack off the head of one of the dragonlings and to take it over to the northern island of known as Wyvern Bank in order to rectify potential unhappy parents. Unfortunately, that did not happen quite as such, as they were tasked to run protection for a merchant who had to go to the opposite end of the island to a town called Cliff's Edge, running goods that way, and so took up the job as money was a little bit tight and drinks are expensive. Priorities. So went through to Cliff's Edge, met up there with the locals. It appears that the village of Cliff's Edge, beautiful village, sits in the upper side of quite a large cliff with a collection of stairs going down to jetties where the fishing boats were. The majority of the people living in the village were Arakokra, so humanoid birds. Very fun group, actually. Dobo quite enjoyed the different look of the ladies that were there. And they intermingled, had some drinking games with some of the locals, which, because of Will's inability to get drunk, they reasonably easily won, and spent the night there, after which they were asked by the alderman of Cliff's Edge if they would be able to help Cliff's Edge out, as it seems that they had some issues with fishing. They usually fishing went up and down. Sometimes the catch was good, other times not so good, but currently the last few days it was especially bad, and they were wondering if something might be happening to the fish. So the party agreed, went out to investigate, and came across a group of caves in which some Kuatua lived, which, upon further investigation, they discovered that there were effectively two leaders to this group of Kuatua, a king, who should probably be the lead, and then a religious fanatic priestess that had convinced the Kuatua to worship a aboleth that lived in the area, and they realized that it's this worship of the aboleth that causes the problems with the fish. Met up with a gnome. I can't remember exactly who Till was, but a small gnome. I think it was a rogue. Really can't remember now. Ross will probably help me right. Till the Tiny. Met up with him there, and he helped them navigate the tunnels in order to outsmart the Kuatoa, and eventually overthrow or overpower and kill the religious fanatic priestess. After which they encountered the king, who was actually very pleased to see them and very willing to come up with a treaty between the Kuatua people as well as the people from Cliff's Edge. The king gifted them a small chest of what he called treasures to the party in thanks for ridding the Kuatua population of this priestess, as she caused some other trouble. They then went back to Cliff's Edge to report their findings, after which they parted ways from Tilda the Tiny. He left them a map to some treasures left by his ex-girlfriend, which turned out to be a dragon from the description that they gave, or that he gave. After which they found their way back to Rivergate, having completed all of what they intended to do at Cliff's Edge, and reached Cliff's Edge. Well done. Reached Rivergate, only to find out that Rivergate is starting to suffer, as the part that the dragons had destroyed, the part of the town, was their fishing quarter. That's what it's called, which could put some strain on food production for Rivergate, causing the party to go back to Cliff's Edge to communicate that news and asked for increased production on fishing from Cliff's Edge side to supplement the lack of fish over in Rivergate. At this point, Lyndall had caused quite a lot of issues for the rest of the party. He had discovered some interesting recreational plants in the forest, and he decided that the best course of action is to take them all at once, making him less capable of interacting as he should have, and causing Aurelius to tie him up outside, and in order for him to cool off. This probably was for the best, but they left him out there quite long, and he was taken in by a Arakokra until he recovered from his wonderful recreational trip. But not before the rest of the party left to head off to a forest close by where some elves had lived, where some elves live, and were facing some issues with the forest dying around them, starting to die around them. They went through to a town known as Lemoltree and met up with the elves. On the way there, they encountered two very unique specimens. A beautiful woman who introduced herself as Kaya with a K, clearly full of herself, and her companion, a half-orc girl, literally little kid girl. The relationship between these two were somewhat interesting, as although Kaya with a K was very clearly a woman, Sparkle called Kaya Daddy. The party decided to adopt these two strange wanderers. Probably not for the best, maybe for the best. They were unsure at that point, but these two accompanied them to Lemoltree and helped solve the issues that they faced at in Lemoltree. The forest, they found out, were the dying was caused, interestingly enough, by a dwarven druid who had invited a blight into the forest that was slowly eating away at the plant life in the forest, and upon which killing the druid as well as his tree source, that or the source tree from which the blight had started to spread, they managed to stop the blight, but it would take several years for the forest to truly recover from the damage that had been done. The party took along the druid staff, as it was a very interesting staff that they had not come across. Will was able to decipher some of what was on the staff, as Jay using comprehend languages as well. It was a form of dwarven runes that ordained the entire staff, running in 4 paths down the length of the entire staff. Will was able to decipher some of the individual runes, but there were some runes that he was unable to decipher immediately. And the writing style is a style he was not quite accustomed to. So they took it along in order to study further when they're in a safer, more relaxed environment. And at this point, Dobo decides that he had had enough of this forest and elves, and not really sure what was going on, but he decided to walk off and find his own way in the world. So the party returned to Cliff's Edge without Dobo on their side. Upon reaching Cliff's Edge, things were quite dire. The first they noticed was the king of the Kuo-toa nailed to some form of a structure, being carried into battle as a banner. This group of Kuo-toa marching on Cliff's Edge in full force. They reached Cliff's Edge in time to see the Arakokra had managed to send word to Limbal Tree in time, and there were some elven reinforcements to help them in their battle, and the party then joined in as well, defeating most of the Kuo-toa, only to incite the anger of the aboleth that they were worshipping. Luckily for them, the aboleth was not the smartest of aboleths, despite his long memory, and swam mostly at the surface towards Cliff's Edge, allowing the defenders of Cliff's Edge to shoot quite a lot of missiles at the aboleth and do a lot of damage before the aboleth eventually reached Cliff's Edge, climbing the cliff and starting to cause absolute chaos in the village. But the party eventually managed to defeat the aboleth, with Sparkle first being afraid and hiding away, and eventually landing the killing blow on the aboleth. Will, very intrigued with this creature, managed to contain some of its mucus before it slid off the cliff back into the ocean for further study. Him not being organic could touch this mucus without having any effect on him, but his other party members, namely Aurelius and a few of the other, who else touched it? It was Aurelius, I think Sparkle, I think Kaya also touched, if I remember correctly. All touched the mucus and found that they couldn't breathe, and jumped from the top of the cliff into the water below, where they were able to breathe. Aurelius, unfortunately, due to his heavy armor, sank to the bottom of the ocean and was never heard from again. And the others spent their time in the water until they realized that they couldn't breathe water anymore as a fish would, made it back to shore. safely. No one else was too gravely injured until they reached the top, in which they were caught in quite a severe meteorite shower, causing everyone to run and hide. Unfortunately, Sparkle was a bit on the slow side and got hit by a small piece of meteorite, which somehow sent her into a blinding rage. And she ended up attacking the people that were there with her. Um, the party tried their best to not hurt the little girl, but had to subdue her in some manner, and it took quite some time before she regained her consciousness and lost the rage that she was experiencing. Um, yeah, leaving her quite devastated as to the damage that she had managed to cause. Will, once again, not being organic, picked up some of the meteorites that had fallen, with it not having any effect on him, but seeing other organic creatures picking up these meteorite rocks, having them also fall into a blinding rage. As a result, he decided to collect all of these different rocks, or as many as he could find, in order to take it with them to prevent anyone else from potentially getting hurt due to this strange element that these meteorites contained. And they made their way to back to Rivergate. On this route back to Rivergate, Lyndall unfortunately perished in a wolf attack. They had discovered another lone traveler named June, who was busy fighting some wolves, and in the offensive, Lyndall unfortunately did not survive to see the end of the day, but June did, and she joined up with the party, started traveling with them on their way back to Rivergate. Upon arriving at Rivergate, back at the tavern where they had organized for some permanent rooms for them, Will and Jay set about deciphering the staff that they took from the dwarven druid, for it to read, or to function as a warning that there is something big coming their way. If I can find the actual inscription now, it would be very nice. It's quite an interesting inscription, intricate inscription. Nearly there. The inscription, after having been able to decipher it, reads the four lines down each of the each of the sides of the staff. Reads, "Wake up, humanity! Don't you see? There is a monster coming your way. He is traveling through the void, between planes, while asleep in ice. His followers will rain down on this world before he himself will darken our sun. His presence will bring an imbalance to this world. The gifts he brings will cause unhappiness and grief. Beware, peoples of this earth. A tentacled monstrosity is heading towards our plane. His followers are preparing for his arrival. They have been worshipped as gods, but that will change once he arrives. All lesser gods will fall away, and all will serve him. His followers have taken up dominion over the deep and dark realms. They can be found in the depths of the oceans and at the ends of dark tunnels. They are heralded as gods by the most depraved of creatures. Should you come across one, they can be killed, but know this, it will be a tough fight. some will not make it. At first he will sleep, but in his slumber things will already start to change. This change will affect all things. It will continue to expand unless the being is killed. Warning, do not let the fish worship it, else it becomes too powerful to kill. But working together as a group will allow you to prevail. Clearly a warning and a prophecy of things yet to come. Whether it is relevant to their current situation or not remain to be seen. They also, that's probably one of my favorite parts, decided that this is the best time to open the chest that the Kuatua king had gifted them. But unsure of its contents, they went outside to an open field, placed in the middle of the field, and using Mage Hand, opened the chest to nothing. Coming closer for a deeper inspection, they realized that the chest is filled with seashells. Nothing of particular value, nothing to that can really be sold. Just some pretty seashells. Let me just find myself quickly. They then decided to gift this chest of seashells to the waitress at the Cloak and Dagger named Tamidur, a half-orc, quite an attractive young lady. And then, before, well, spending the night there trying to find out what their next step is regarding what the staff had said, as well as any potential jobs that might come in. But during that night, a strange storm hit the Isles of Adamor. Strange green lightning, rather than the white-blue that everyone is used to. And as they peered out the window, they noticed a tower appear on top of the volcano on the main island. And shortly after, the storm completely disappeared. The following morning, they elected to seek out the tower and what it's all about. Headed up there, quite a strenuous 2-day journey, but made it to the top and came face to face with a small winged creature of a humanoid shape, except for the wings, next to what looks like a walking ballista. This creature introduced herself as Tinkerbell, and she is the guardian of this tower, and it took some convincing for Tinkerbell to allow the party to move through and actually meet up with the owner of the tower, a old wizened wizard named Inagron. Inagron was very interested in the party, as they seemed to be the only ones that had come into contact with what he called necronium, which when described, they realized is the meteorite shower that they had endured a few days prior, and they promised to bring Inagron some of the necronium in order to study, and in return In return, Inagron paid them by giving them quite powerful weapons as well as a strange book. The book required several keys, or pieces of a key to unlock. Supposed to be here in my drawer, which I don't think it is now. No. Must have put it elsewhere. So, gifted them this book and mentioned that it cannot be opened by any, or forced open. You would need the individual key fragments. You need the key fragments in order to open it up. And he sent them on a quest to find these key fragments. He said the first of which is in the area where the Necronium meteorite shower was. So they best start looking there, which they did, followed through, and noticed that they had missed a few of the Necronium pieces, as well as the key fragment, which they eventually found, returned to Inagron with, and from there he sent them out to 3 possible locations for the second key fragment. Inagron also elected to send Tinkerbell with them, as it would be good experience for Tinkerbell, both to get out of the tower a bit, as well as to gain some more combat experience and real world experience, as she did not have much at that point. So Tinkerbell went with them. The 3 locations were one on Glikia, one on the Icegar Archipelago, and one on Wyvern Bank. Upon reaching the docks in Rivergate, the party realized that going to Wyvern Bank is probably not going to be as easy as they had hoped, as Wyvern Bank is notoriously infested with dragons, which makes people quite skeptical to approach the island. So they elected to go to the Icegar Archipelago first. They met up with a ship's captain named Captain Salt Eater, who immediately took quite a liking to June, and they started a on again off again relationship depending on when the party needed a ship, but went through to Icegar Archipelago, where they found a nutcase of a hobo, in today's terms probably what would be considered a conspiracy theorist, living alone on one of the islands close to the opening of a cave system. This hobo mentioned that this cave system was in fact a mine, which connected underwater to Glikia, and this mine was slave operated and ran by the city council of Rivergate in order to mine this strange green rock, which he had some of outside of his house, and he used that in order to send him on a interesting journey of the mind. Thankfully, the party immediately realized that this green rock was Necronium, and were very thankful that this man was alone on this island and was not able to cause damage to other creatures. But the party then ventured into the mines, where they met up with an old companion named Dobo, where they found him chained to the wall mining this particular green rock. they also met a strange creature named Vernari. He was definitely humanoid, but had a squid face, which was later revealed that he was just a human with a strange squid mask, which is a status symbol within his cult, which was housed on Glikia. Um, after, when meeting, after meeting these two people, Jay unfortunately lost his balance, and upon reaching out to catch himself before falling, his hand landed on some necronium, causing him to enter into a mindless rage, causing another battle to ensue between the party and one of their own members. And Jay eventually came enough to his senses to realize that, not fully recovered, but came enough to his senses to realize that fighting this group of people is not the best of ideas, and fled. Um, Iskar Archipelago, never to be found, at least until now. Um, I'm not quite sure if he'll be found again. We'll have to wait and see. Upon leaving the mines, Will and Kaya started the discussion of starting a mercenary guild, as Jay had started dabbling in necromancy and raised several skeletons to fight for him. These, which indicated he might potentially start an army of his own, and they wanted the means to fight him should the need arise. After On their way back, they did make a stop over at Wyvern Bank. They managed to convince Captain Salteater that it is in everyone's best interest to do so. On Wyvern Bank, they first followed the map left to them by Till the Tiny, as they were sure there was treasure there, and as all people know, treasure is what motivates everyone. Followed the map and came across Till the Tiny's ex, which happened to be an adult red dragon. This dragon, Tinkerbell initially changed the way she looks in order to try and approach the cave. She changed herself to look like a flying kobold in order to approach the cave and try and speak to the dragon, to find out more details. But unfortunately managed to anger the dragon and got a blast of fire full in the face, and when the fire dissipated, all that was left was a small pile of charred bone and ashes. The party then fought the dragon. Kaya managed to cast a spell of fear, preventing the dragon from leaving its cave, making it quite a lot easier to fight this dragon and eventually kill it. And in the dragon's hoard, they found the second key fragment for the book that they were attempting to unlock. At this point, they tried to see if they can put the two fragments in and force the third one, which caused quite severe damage to the persons who tried that, resulting in them not trying again. But also taking Tinkerbell, what's left of Tinkerbell, back to Inagron, and bring him the news of the second key fragment to try and find out if they can, or if he has any information regarding the third key fragment. Inegron, grieved by the loss of his companion Tinkerbell, told the party that he did not have anything at that particular moment and asked them to give him some time to grieve Tinkerbell's death, which he did. As soon as they left his tower, it disappeared, leaving the party completely at a loss of what to do. During the time that they had free now, not knowing what to do, they went back to Rivergate in order to start the guild, spent some time with the city council, also known fondly by the locals as the place that sends you mad, in order to establish the guild and pay all the right fees and do everything official. It took quite some time, but they managed to establish the guild and buy relatively cheaply a housing area in the ruined district that was recently, the house was recently rebuilt. The rest of the fishing district still hasn't completely recovered from the dragon attack that happened a few weeks prior. They also joined up with the Festival of Foundings Day, which is the day that the Owls discovered the Isles of Adamore the first time, and yearly has a festival to celebrate this day. Had quite some fun, enjoyed some carnival games, and encountered a strange merchant in a tent who claimed to be able to make them stronger, and indeed this seemed to be the case. This merchant also disappeared the moment they left, and no one else, whoever they asked, weren't aware of this merchant even being there in the first place. After about 2 weeks of establishing the guild and enjoying some festivities, Inegron's tower, Witchlight, returned to the top of the volcano where it was initially, and when they went up to meet with him, he mentioned that he had a new lead regarding the third key fragment, and that it is off-world. They would have to travel to the elemental plane of water known as Vatnheim. Inegron told them that he would be able to open a portal for them to travel there, but he would not be able to open a portal for them to return. But he told them of the alignment of the planes, that when two planes come close together and align with some other planes, a thinning occurs in the barrier between the two planes, temporarily allowing creatures to cross from one plane to the other. And he warned them that if they wish to return, that there is a specific time and a specific place where they have to be in order to jump through the thinning, else they might lose their chance, and the next one might not be for several years, making it somewhat difficult for them to return to the material plane. They agreed and set off. They were sent through a portal along with a ship in a bottle, which once they broke the ship out of its bottle, it expanded to a full-sized ship manned completely with golems in order to manage the ship, manage any weapons, as well as sail the ship. They sailed to the point that was indicated where the key fragment was and found it, which in the process nearly killed Will due to him being brave and facing several underwater creatures on his own. Thankfully, the rest of the group had managed to get there just in time to prevent the creatures from killing him. Found the third key fragment and made their way to the point where the thinning between the planes would occur. They got to this point just in time, but as they jumped through, it seems that not all of them were able to make it through, and they unfortunately lost June in the process. Thankfully, having returned to the material plane, Inegron was there waiting for them. Am I right now? Oh no, I skipped over a section. Oops. During the off time, before they actually went through to Vattenheim, they met up with a dwarven swashbuckler sea captain named Thane. That's how they were able to navigate in the elemental plane of water, as they actually had a ship's captain with them. And also during this time they returned to Wyvernbank for a whiskey that they had discovered named Dragonfire Whiskey. Upon arriving at the distillery, Thane suggested that they would happily give one of their party members, Vernari, the strange human with the squid mask, in return for some of the bottles of whiskey, which the dragons immediately agreed to, seeing that it's a easy lunch. Some drinking ensued. Vernari was led away and then led through to the dragons to be eaten. And when the party members asked some of the kobolds walking around if they could get Vernari's, as they called it, shit, the kobold happily obliged, bringing a bag of excrement to them, after which they needed to explain no, they wanted his belongings, his money, his weapons, and that kind of thing, those sort of things, to move as it's items of value that they could still use. After which they Will made a deal with Captain Salteater that if Captain Salteater could outdrink him, Will would pay him a fortune from the dragon's hoard that they had recovered along with the second key fragment, or that if Will outdrinks Captain Salteater, Will would get his ship, which naturally, seeing as Will is not a organic form, he is unable to actually get drunk, which very much worked in the favor of Will. They got Captain Salteater drunk and sold him for another 3 bottles of whiskey. Will then did manage to confuse himself, which is the closest he's able to get to drunk, get lost in the tunnels, come face to face with another dragon and nearly end up in a fight with that before Thane and several of the kobolds dragged him away. One of the kobolds managed to latch onto Will and would not let go until they reached the boat. Upon reaching the boat, Thane then convinced the ship's crew that this blue kobold named Mock was actually their Captain Salteater, who was changed in form due to the way he went about with some of the dragons. So the crew accepted Mock as their captain, and who their new captain Mock then allowed Thane to captain the ship from there on, and the party had gotten a ship. So back to after Vattenheim, when they returned to the material plane, Inegron was waiting for them on their ship and brought them back to the land, or to Rivergate in of itself. After which they start hearing more and more rumors of people in boats being attacked by the water. Sounds quite strange. Some of these attacks were specifically worded that it's the water attacking the boats and then drowning the occupants. There were also news reports of the fishing villages such as Cliff's Edge who were being attacked by the ocean and people dying and being dragged under, forcing the party to investigate these happenings to find out what's going on. So they set sail to around Adamore to Cliff's Edge, where they literally fought water. There were several water elementals which attacked the city. On the way to Cliff's Edge, just before they left, they met up with another warlock named Grizz, who got initiated into the party by having to drink a shot of Dragonfire whiskey, which made him drunk for several days after. I would really like to get my hands on a bottle of that. So he was still drunk by the time they reached Cliff's Edge, and was not of much use in the battle. But they managed to fend off the water and save the city, after which they went out to sea to try and find what is the source of these attacks of various water creatures and elementals attacking boats and fishing villages, essentially waging war on the land. In the search, they were caught in a storm which unfortunately caused Kaya, with a K, to be washed overboard, and she was lost at sea, forcing the party to return to Rivergate. Sparkle initially was in shambles, but when she was told that her daddy, Kaya, was away to visit Kaya's daddy, she seemed to be okay with it, but nevertheless wasn't too fond of it, upon which the party agreed to recruit another of the new guild members, quite a strange one, a creature, well, what was Sam? I can't remember the exact creature, a lizard folk type creature named Sam, which he changed the way he acts and fights every single day. He would wake up one day and there was a 50% chance that he would be the same Sam you had yesterday, or that he would be a completely different Sam today, making it very interesting to enter into combat with Sam. They then organized with Inegron to create a portal linking the guild hall to Inegron's tower to make travel between the two a lot faster, as the journey from Rivergate through to Witchlight is 2 days in one direction, so that's 4 days to go visit Inagron just in travel time. Made a portal, popped through to Inagron, where they discovered that the thinning of the plains which they had jumped through, due to them jumping through, it had created a permanent portal, and there was a multitude of water-based creatures who kept on coming through from Vatnheim to the material plane, and it's these creatures that is waging war on land. Inagron took some time to find out how exactly to solve this problem, and realized that the portal is kept in place with 3 anchor points on the material plane, and destroying these anchor points, they would then close the portal for good, preventing any additional creatures from coming through. The first portal anchor that they encountered was underwater, and it was quite a strange occurrence. When they reached it, they found a dark semi-sphere on the ocean floor, and several sea creatures, some sharks and octopi, swimming around it. And them coming closer had no effect on these creatures, except that the creatures swimming around it would not allow the party to cross through to get to this strange semi-sphere. They would only attack the party once the party attacked the creatures swimming around it. So sphere with creatures swimming constantly around it, destroyed the creatures and started destroying the semi-sphere, and each time they hit it, they saw a quick flash of a chain leading up to where the portal is, and upon destroying itself, they saw the chain falling away and dragging towards the portal. The second portal anchor, I lost my train of thought for a moment. The second portal anchor was on Wyvern Bank itself. Having been acquainted somewhat with the Dragonborn and the Kobolds and Dragons at the Dragonfire Distillery, they went there first in order to try and discover if they knew anything about this spot. Upon the Dragonborn, they stated that yes, they did know about this. They were not aware of anything that they could do, but if the party would be able to help them, they would give them even more Dragonfire whiskey, another 2 bottles, so 7 bottles in total. And they sent along a red kobold as a guide to take them to where they are, and it seems that the red kobold might have caused some trouble at the distillery, as the Dragonborns working there said that they could keep this red kobold named Khak, K-H-A-K, as if they sorted out this problem. Upon arriving to the point where the portal anchor was, they found a large group of undead. Same sphere in the ground with a large group of undead walking around it. Once again, forcing them to fight their way to the center of the or to where the semisphere is in the center in order to destroy it, and seeing the same results when attacking it, a chain flickering in and out of sight until it's destroyed, and the chain dragging over to where the portal is. Then went to the third portal anchor, which was once again also underwater. Now, because earlier Will took the aboleth mucus, the party had the means to breathe underwater, which makes a lot of this a lot easier than it probably would have been. Upon arriving to this anchor point, they noticed that this anchor point has disrupted the crust of the earth where they are. It's lodged in the middle of a boat, so you can't see it from the sides, and radiating from the boat outwards, there were several tendrils of lava boiling the water around it, meaning that one couldn't swim over it without taking damage. And it took quite a while to destroy this portal anchor, as every time they hit the portal anchor, the veins of lava would grow larger, forcing them further and further back from the where the portal anchor was, until Will realized that he could chuck some of the necronium onto the portal anchor and cause it to explode, which resulted in enough damage for the portal anchor to be destroyed, and releasing the third chain, if closing the portal between the two worlds. From there back to Rivergate, as that's home base, and the battles between the sea and the land increased many times over, to the point where the city council proclaimed that no one was allowed to sail out anymore, completely turning reliability for food over to what can be farmed on land. The party went back to Inegron and found that Inegron had discovered a strange pathway that wasn't there before. Inegron has a beautiful, magical three-dimensional map of the area around him that shows a lot of aspects where they were able to see that what Vernari spoke of, and as well as the crazy hermit, the mine entrance being on Iskar Archipelago and going underground or under the water through to Glikia was in fact real. But this time there was another pathway leading away from that and disappearing into darkness, which Inegron was very curious to, as this was somewhat new, and considering everything going on, probably not a good thing. And he also had some evidence to suggest that the means to unlock the second page of the book he had given them earlier was probably down this route. This sent the party to essentially force their way out of the Rivergate harbor in order to get through to the Iskar Archipelago, and had to fight with the sea in order to get there, as there were some creatures that were trying to drown them. But they managed to find their way to the Iskar Archipelago, go through to the mine opening, down to where the third tunnel, or this additional tunnel, joins up. Spent the evening there, and the next morning they were confronted with some intellect devourers, which, although they were hidden, the intellect devourers became aware of their presence and a battle ensued, which unfortunately claimed the lives of Sparkle and Sam, leaving Will. Thane was off on, well, stayed with the boats at that point, as he, even though being a dwarf, he wasn't too fond of underground spaces. He preferred a boat. So that left Will and Grizz, the new warlock that was drunk for several days earlier, to venture down this path. Upon venturing down, they met up with a drow named Isla, a beautiful young woman who was trying to get out of this deep underground, which they very quickly realized was the Underdark. And this is currently where we are in the campaign. They have spent several days in the Underdark. They have fought with some Nothics. They had been captured. They realized that the hierarchy of the Underdark, specifically with the Drow, is somewhat different than what they're used to, in the sense that it is a matriarchy, and these two males, Will and Grizz, are, because they are also not Drow, they are often viewed as the servants of Isla, who they had just met, and they are currently trying to find their footing in the Underdark and trying to find a way to discover what the purpose of the Underdark linking to the mineshaft in the Isles of Adamor is, as well as what could possibly, what the second page of the book Inagron had given them could possibly mean. And that is where we'll be picking up our actual play on Wednesday when the players are there. So please join us Wednesday 7:30, and we'll see where the adventure takes us from there. Thank you for everyone that joined. I have a feeling that some of my players might tell me that I forgot about something here and there. I might rectify the details somewhat later if needs be, but this is the story of the Isles of Adamor until now.